Speed, skills, accuracy, brilliance. The 2026 WSCC features some of the best, fastest, and most exciting chess you'll see all year. 16 of the world's top women chess players are pitted against each other in a no-holds-barred, single-elimination bracket. World Championships, Speed Chess Championships, it doesn't matter. Wenjun and Ho Yifan are the pinnacle of the sport. Kostenyuk, Lagno, and Muzichuk are speed demons, racking up world championships and blitz and rapid tournaments all over the world.
Whoa!
While Bibisara, Vaishali, and Divya bring the heat every time they're over a chessboard. Can they finally dethrone the reigning queen? But don't sleep. Don't blink at the young guns in this field either. Lee, Atwell, and Kamdamova are on the precipice of greatness. The 8th WSCC. The chess will be astounding. You don't want to miss this.
Hello, and the Women's Speed Chess Championship is back and coming your way. It is the third of our quarterfinals. It's going to be an electrifying clash between defending WSCC champion Wenjun, also 5-time Women's World Champion, against the young gun that is International Master Alice Lee. Who is going to fall at the hurdle? Who is going to proceed? That's what we're going to find out today. I'm your host, International Master Ivanka Hauska, and I'm here with one of the best in the business. Of course, it is International Master Anna Rudolph. Anna, we have another quarterfinal coming our ways, and so far it's been an epic run.
It's an incredible event to follow, and thank you again for the kind words, Jovi. You're always generous with your introductions. I cannot wait for this match because we have the defending champion, Wenjun, 5-time Women's World Champion, 2 times winner of the Women's Speed Chess Championship, has never lost a match in the Speed Chess Championship, but her opponent is our youngest participant ever in the history of Speed Chess Championships, and I feel like we could be in for an upset. I'm gonna predict that this is going to be a really close match, and Alice Lee, I feel like, has chances to upset the Women's World Champion.
Exactly, Anna. This is what we've come to expect. The unexpected. Because of this, the format. For those of you who've been joining us or following along, or those of you who haven't, it's been a week and a bit since we last saw our last quarterfinal, but this is it. We'll have 16 players, single elimination bracket. So that means you lose, you are out. And just for the quarterfinals, it's going to be 45 minutes of 5+1, half an hour of 3+1, followed by 15 minutes of bullet, and we've already seen 2 quarterfinal matches. Today we're going to be finding out who our third semi-finalist is, and we've already started with some explosive chess, and the winner of this match is going to be facing off against Anastasia Avramidou, who was the dark horse.
This, again, is one of those clashes where you have, obviously, the Women's World Champion, defending champion of the Women's Speed Chess Championship. As we said, Wenjun hasn't lost a single match in the WSCC in all of her participations throughout the last 3 years. But then again, her opponent is a 16-year-old prodigy, Alice Lee, who is the only female player who has ever broken the 3,000 rating barrier in bullet on Chess.com. She did it just a few months ago. No female player has ever reached the Chess.com 3,000 rating, and we are being told that Alice is playing bullet right now on Chess.com as a warm-up for the match that's just about to start against Wenjun. Incredible.
Incredible. And why break a winning formula? Because Alice, I remember in her round of 16 match against Alexandra Kostenyuk, she was also warming up with some bullet, and it was there where she was able to start the flex. But now she has the defending Women's Speed Chess Champion in her sights, Wenjun, 5-time Women's World Champion, 2-time, I've got to say back-to-back Women's Speed Chess Champion. She has proven to be such a dominant competitor, especially in those slower portions, 5+1, 3+1. So if Alice can keep toe-to-toe, then it might be all decided in the bullet. Oh, Anna, I can't wait for this one. I definitely can't wait to see how Ju Wenjun will be dealing with this match. It's been a while since her first event, her first match, I gotta say. That was all the way back in the beginning of July. We're now in towards the end of the month. So it has been a long time since Ju Wenjun has been able to flex those internet chess skills.
Yeah, and I'm curious if she has been practicing in between or not. Why, for Alice, well, we see that she's playing Bullet right now, or at least she has just finished practicing a little bit again on Chess.com, but she's a very frequent player on the site. And as we said, she is the only female player ever to cross the 3,000 rating barrier in Bullet on Chess.com. And the match has just started with a Queen's Pawn opening. We are starting with the 5+1 portion, 5 minutes with 1 second increment.
Yes, 45 minutes of this ahead of us as Alice Lee plays with the black pieces against defending WSCC champion Ju Wenjun. And Alice, she's coming off a very successful US Junior Open debut, and now she's challenging in the center with a very quick c5. It's going to be isolated Queen's Pawn time, which means there's a lot of dynamic factors at play. White is going to be coming out with the bishop either to g5 or trying to get in a d5, or maybe even a knight is going to jump into e5. But one thing is clear, that Ju Wenjun is definitely going to have to play very actively.
Very actively, and that's what we are seeing by placing the queen on the e5. The rook is coming to support the isolated pawn, and the intentions will be very, very much on the dynamic and aggressive side of this position from White's perspective. White is accepting to have a structural weakness, that's this isolated pawn, but in return she gets a lot of space and activity for her pieces, and she's saying immediately, I am going to get rid of that pawn. I want it traded. I want all the files opening up, everything traded on d5, which is, I think, a very logical approach. She also needs to take into consideration what happens if black takes the knight first and then captures on d5.
Yeah, those are questions to be answered, because there's so many captures there. There's bishop takes knight. There was also pawn takes pawn as a response. But we're seeing that Alice just simply captures in the middle of the board. And White's whole philosophy here is that they are quicker with their pieces. They are ready for the opening of the center, whereas black is not. But I got to say that strategically, there is some risk to this, because if white is not fast, then black is going to have zero, and I mean zero, problems. So here, bishop takes bishop is a move that I am expecting, but we're seeing there are choices. You can, of course, go queen to c7 or queen to c8, but definitely that queen will be moving. She doesn't want to be there in the eye line of the white rook.
For sure. Absolutely. White is threatening to win a piece by attacking the pinned piece, and also the b4 bishop is loose, so queen to c7. Very logical move. And now the blue arrow is suggesting that if Ju Wenjun develops the bishop to that very active square on g5, that is giving her quite a pleasant advantage. The other rook is ready to come to c1, attacking the queen, and it is quite a situation for Alice to find the best and most accurate moves, starting with a move that probably doesn't look like the most logical. You would want to place a rook on e8, but somehow moving the a rook to e8 rather than the f rook is... Oh, no, the computer changes my... Never mind, Jovi. It was saying originally that this is not as good of a move as moving the A rook, but now I think it just needed some time to process this position. Don't we all need time to assess a new situation once everything has disappeared in the center when it comes to those pawn trades? And now queen to b5, double attack. The d7 knight and the b4 bishop are both hanging. There's only one way in which you can deal with this, and that's to retreat the bishop to d6 and block the d file. Also create this queen bishop battery. It's quite a situation where it looks like black is hanging in by a thread, and it's so crucial to play this move and then bring the rook to e6 to not lose a piece here.
Exactly. That's the thing. White's moves are coming so naturally. Bishop to d6. The rook is going to be doubling. Rook goes to e6. But it just feels like white is the one with all the pressure. I mean, you can also flick in rook to c1 or rook to, doubling looks better. I'm going to say it looks more to the point. But even then, there's so many tactical possibilities. Like I'm looking at the bishop coming down to f4 again, just focusing in on the fact that there's a lot of pressure against that knight on d7. Oh, what is going to happen as Wenjun already goes on the front foot? She goes for this rook to c1. Here I wasn't so sure because there are possibilities of, I was going to say block the attack, but even that is not without risk because there's b4 at the end of the day. You pin, you might potentially get yourself into trouble. So the knight to c5, b4 is something that needs to be calculated. What does Alice have up her sleeve if white were to play b4?
It looks terrible, isn't it? Because of the pin, it looks like black is losing a piece, but she has a tactical resource. That blue arrow is suggesting the only move in which will save Alice in this position to attack the c1 rook with her bishop. And if there's a trade, then the queen is replacing the bishop on the f4 square, targeting this loose piece on the back rank. So this is the only way in which Alice can escape from the spin. Of course, she sees the move. That's why she entered this whole variation, because she saw that in the follow-up, she has this resource, very important move. Now, of course, there's a lot to calculate because other than capturing here, white can simply decide to take the knight on c5 and allow for her rook to be captured, because then at the end of the day, you will be taking 2 minor pieces for the rook.
Yes, and again, the positions becomes crazy sharp because 2 pieces against the rook, it all hinges on piece activity. Who's got the targets? How active are the rooks? So many dynamic factors at play. I'm going to say because the position is open, that I perhaps would be tempted not to go into that, but you need nerves of steel and you need time as well to process everything. And that's why we're seeing Wenjun use the time on the clock. I mean, there's also perhaps other moves as well. I'm wondering whether she can get away with going rook to c2, just keep maintaining that pin, banking on the fact that the knight on f3 is covering the very critical e1 square. But white does have issues with the back rank, and Alice, she is there on the edge in this position, but she's getting away with it so far.
Yeah, it's incredible, and just goes to show how talented Alice is and how quickly she calculated all this. Because we are here sitting like, oh, there's so many options, and it's like you need to see all of them through to be sure that you are not losing material here from black's perspective. And she just went for it so confidently, so quickly. And now it's Wenjun who is using quite a lot of time to assess what's the best counter for her, how to deal with this. Is she going to give up the rook for 2 minor pieces? Or is she going to move the rook away? Will it be rook c2? Will it be rook d1? There's so many questions, but there's not much time to consider all this. She's down to her final minute and 15 seconds. And with 1 second increment, this is going to be quite a significant time advantage for Alice in game 1 of the match.
Yes. And as you mentioned, it is critical right now for white, decision time. Do you go into that 2 pieces versus a rook? And now you're under the minutes, and Wenjun is taking her time to come to that decision. She can't wait for too long. She has to be practical here because Alice, we know, is a beast in bullet. And something that we saw in the match between Katerina Lagno and Anastasia Avramidou is that Anastasia, being the very experienced bullet player, was able just to keep the game alive. She goes for this transition. And now the whole key is that white has to play to control the rooks. And as we see blue arrow appear, you have to trade off a set of rooks. And I recently saw a description that when you're playing with the minor pieces against a heavy piece, such as a queen or a rook, you got to think of your small pieces like the bishop and knight as a herd. And you keep them together. Yes. And I was like, I love that.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. They need to coordinate very well together. At the moment, white cannot really say that these are coordinating very well, but the back rank was even more urging to make sure that there's not nothing going on. And interestingly, for black, the same issue happens. If you move the rook away, wanting to win the bishop, then white will be delivering back rank checkmate. So both of them have been threatening the back rank, and that's why black cannot win the bishop here. But black could take this pawn now with the pawn or with the queen. And I feel like Alice's chances are getting better now with only one rook on the board. So that rook trade was key for black. And maybe now it is Alice with the more time and this pass pawn who has some chances here to push.
Yes. Yeah, and I actually got to say, I really like Alice's decision of their trading off the queens. That was very important because the two minor pieces, they are vicious when it comes to giving mating attacks. And now the rook is powerful because it has the whole board where it can traverse. And here we're seeing the king step up to c3. The c-pawn is more or less a goner that can be just corralled. But the rook on a2 is very, very powerful. And the question is, like, how is black going to make progress? And I don't think they can, but just take a look at the clock. Anna, Wenjun, 11 seconds.
And that's something that Alice will be definitely taking into consideration here, how to keep the position as complex as possible. Not easy because it's a few pieces left on the board in an endgame, but still to keep some life in the position, to keep threats alive, to not allow the simplification of the rest of the pawns on the board, because then the time situation will matter. Then it will be harder for Wenjun to make the right moves. We're seeing trades now on g5. It was not possible to take it, at least not without giving up the f2 pawn. That's why Alice went for the push. She might want to push g4 now and chase the knight away.
And she does that, but I've got to also compliment the bishop and the knight that are working so well together. Bishop being anchored by that pawn on f2, and now the knight is simply going to start jumping around. And Wenjun has done such a great job of preventing black from creating a pass pawn on the right side of the board, whereas the a pawn is firmly under control. And now Alice, she is trying so hard to get something, and what's stopping pawn takes pawn? Nothing. So Alice is being sneaky. King to d3. The king's bishop and knight, they should stick together.
So she's now she has managed to trade the winning king and pawn endgame. This king and pawn endgame should be winning for black, but she has to find this move and march toward the white pass pawn before approaching the other pawn of white. Goodness me, she has found the best combination. She has executed it perfectly, and she wins the first game with the black pieces. 16-year-old Alice Lee.
Absolutely, starting with a bang. And I gotta say, the whole transition into the middle game, Alice just played perfectly, and finding that lovely move h4 with the whole idea of going rook a4, giving up the rook for two pieces. That was such a nice touch. A complicated king and pawn endgame, and Wenjun just didn't have the time to handle the complications. And now we're seeing Alice with the white pieces, and we'll see how Alice begins. She tends to open with a d4. Is she going to be doing more of the same? You never know with these 16-year-olds, Anna. You never know how they're going to open.
Great question. And what a start for Alice Lee, taking down the women's world champion with the black pieces. She had more time on the clock. She was the one pushing in the endgame, and she manages to get through. The players, I think, are about to start the second game. We had a slight connection issue on the end of one of our players, but now it's all smooth sailing. At least we are in the opening stage of game 2. Alice now with the white pieces, and she doesn't go for any standard opening, but instead b3 with the knight on f3.
Yeah, and knight to f3, f6. What a move, trying to get that big center with e5. So Alice says, no, that ain't happening on my watch. So instead d4, but I'm still expecting moves such as e5 as well, just to take control and just say, hey, white has to play very dynamically from now on, because otherwise if black is allowed to go e5, knight c6, complete development, then black is the one who stands very well indeed. Queen drops back, and how is Alice actually going to get developed? That's not an easy question, because if you go e3, yes, that's what I'm expecting. But the problem with playing with less space is that you have less room to maneuver.
less room and only a handful of games in the database for this position that they are following. I think now we are down to just a small sample, 2 games in the database after c3. In both of those, the bishop went to a5. So bishop e7, we are in a completely new territory, but the same strategic principles matter, and what already was highlighted by Jovi, how black has a really healthy space advantage, better placed pieces thanks to that space. The only piece that was harder to develop was the knight, because the pawn on f6 and the bishop on e7 were taking the space away from the knight jumps, but knight h6 heading toward the f7 square or f5 square or g4 square, depending on how the position develops. And this rook to c1 move is not an easy one to play. I wonder if Alice still had that in mind, or she's now improvising, because that's quite unusual to see a rook develop to c1 while the other queenside pieces are still on the bench, ready to be developed, but not easy to see where is this b1 knight going, what's going to happen with the a1 rook. So this is all quite amusing to me, but maybe she has prepared this plan that she wants to push c4 immediately. That's why she needs the rook on c1.
Yeah, that's what I'm expecting as well. It's very difficult to kind of live your best life on the back rank. Don't think it's going to be happening. I think a lot of us would be looking for the simplicity of a pawn break, just to release the tension and at least have a clear-cut plan. So the move I am expecting is c4. Alice does seem to indicate that that is what she wants to do. But there we're seeing in operation, and now Wenjun, she just has a choice. She can stand, she can just continue developing with castles. She can also perhaps just wait with that a little while and maybe go queen to d7 and then just go rook to d8 just to build up the tension. One of the reasons why I'm a little bit hesitant about castles is because the king stands on an open diagonal, but we are seeing instead pawn takes pawn, the tension is released, and now I was going to say the queen will sidestep that trade, but no, they are off, and we're now into. Is this a queenless middle game, or is this an endgame? In my mind, this is an endgame.
I would also consider it an endgame, but it's a good question because there's still quite a lot of pieces on the board, except the queens have been traded, and that's why Wenjun decides to not even castle, because then the king would be further away from the center. And in endgames, you want your king to be an active part of your army, of your other pieces. So it's a king that's heading toward the middle of the board immediately without castling. That's what Alice does too, but her king is a bit further away. So we will see the rooks doubling on the open d file. Makes perfect sense, but there is no entry square on the d file at all. And Alice has the other open file, the c file, for her rook or for her rooks once the other rook comes into the game as well.
Yeah, and it's quite funny because whilst all the pieces are just lining up in the center, the rooks on the D line, the white rooks on the C line, I suspect the action is going to transfer over to the side of the board. We're maybe going to be seeing moves from Wenjun, going to be G5, H5, in order to expand as much as possible. Yeah, well, knight to c5 does have the idea of going knight takes b7, obviously attacking the rook as well. But here I was thinking you just go bishop takes knight, get rid of that knight sitting there on black side of the board, and then just continue with this whole philosophy of expand on the right.
I agree with you that knight is way too dangerous to keep it on the board. So I'm pretty sure that Wenjun is considering as her main candidate move, bishop takes knight. And once the rook takes back on c5, it's also giving up the protection of the b4 square. So knight to b4 now or later could be also a move to consider for black, with the idea of jumping further into white's position from b4, putting pressure on the a2 pawn and also heading toward d3.
Yeah. And well, now we're seeing g6, which has the not so subtle idea of just going e4, rook to d2 incoming. That's the big plan. So white has to do something. So that's why g4 was played. Yeah, shoo that knight away. And the knight goes to the center again. Like she is relentless. Knight to e4, and she's like, yeah, I'm gonna still post up a piece on d2. But I do think that Alice is handling this particular threat very well.
Yeah, this was crucial to chase the knight away, and now she's able to place her rook on d1, so she's again handling the pressure on the d file very precisely, trading one pair of rooks. It's no longer that dangerous. With the n3 squares, the knight has still been guarding the d2 square. This knight is coming back now for a second time to d6. If they wanted to, they could repeat moves here with the knight jumping to the center, rook attacking it, and so on. But Ju Wenjun is not interested in that. She says, I have more time, and I'm trying to put pressure on my opponent because I lost the first game, and that's not a good start to the match. So I think she's going to keep this position alive and keep her chances alive. She needs to put pressure on Alice.
Yeah, and it's also, I gotta say, not in Ju Wenjun's temperament, just to repeat the position. I have seen her grind out many a game. The endgame is really her forte. The knight goes back to d2. So got ideas of just controlling a knight jump into e4. And then the question for Ju Wenjun is how to continue. And this is such a nice move because maybe it's got the idea that after pawn takes pawn, Black is not going to recapture, but instead go to g5, then go rook to h7 and just say, haha, I've ruined your pawn structure.
What a beautiful idea, because we often fall into the trap of taking things very autopilot when it comes to captures and trades. So pawn takes is almost like, yeah, that's how it's going to happen. But what you said, Joey, is a beautiful way of making White's pawn structure a lot more vulnerable. That's why Alice decided to protect the pawn with h3, and now she is going for the same plan. Let's sacrifice a pawn and make Black's pawn structure very vulnerable. So it would be doubled pawns, and the e5 pawn becomes really much of a target for the knight of White as well, the rook and the bishop already attacking it. I don't think Ju Wenjun will take on g5. It looks like it's too much of a liability then for the pawn structures. But she has to do something about the f6 pawn. She might want to push.
Yeah, I'm also feeling that as well. You know, those little guys, they want to stick together. And I do suspect that f5 is the move. You want to meet some knight f3 with ideas of perhaps going e4 and just getting the pawn chain. But such a classy move, though, from Alice. G5. She doesn't care so much about material. She's just saying, hey, I want to get my pieces as active as possible. So Ju Wenjun, she is thinking, I mean, what are the alternate moves? Is she considering? I don't really see anything unless she wants to do a deep dive into the position with her rook. But otherwise, f5 is the most natural move.
Yes, and again, she's spending a lot of time going below a minute in a time control where the increment is only 1 second. She ends up capturing the pawn, now trying to hold on to all of her pawns with this knight f7 move. At the moment, Black is up a pawn, but look at Alice. She's like, no, I'm taking that right now because of the tactics. It's incredible how quickly she spots these things and how confidently she plays it. You know, she's just like, I'm giving up this bishop. I know it. I see it.
It's beautiful because after knight takes bishop, basically the whole thing is the rook takes knight, and after the recapture, the knight is going to slam on g5 and just fork the king and the rook. And how quickly did Alice spot that? And now Ju Wenjun is going to have problems with those pieces as the bishop drops. The bishop's going to take that one. But you see, Alice, she's got all the time in the world now, and she captures with the pawn. I actually was thinking the bishop because I wanted to preserve the pawn structure. But interesting decision. Will that come back to bite, as we're expecting a move such as bishop is going to retreat, I suspect. But even then, this is complicated for Alice. Bishop goes all the way back to b8. Yes, not losing any time whatsoever.
But now the rook is allowed to enter Black's position too, rooks to c7 to attack the b7 pawn. It is a bit funky with the bishop on b8, but it's a temporary situation. And maybe that bishop will now find a new path toward the c5 square through a7. Not the best of peace, Alice's bishop, but Black cannot really target it at the moment. And this pawn had to be guarded by the rook. So I think she will try to do something like bishop to a7, or she could push this pawn, since the rook is guarding b7 and the king is guarding the f7 knight, that d pawn and the d pawn push could be an asset. It's going to happen now because now the king is tied down.
Yes. Okay. Well, it's definitely an option with Ju and Jun having just 10 seconds. But now Alice is also down on the clock as the knight comes over. This rook, so mobile, just being able to just move across the board. But rook takes b7. I would be taking that one. But does she just want to go rook takes? No, rook takes b7. Big threat, rook b6. And white is going. She's going to go for it right
Oh.
now. And Alice, she's got everything beautifully tied together, and it's going to be all about those two passes there on the queen side. A4, A3. It's about keeping them together.
She did not manage to. She drops the a2 pawn with the idea of giving this check and capturing the g6 pawn. So she's winning on time. Just when Ju Wenjun was back in the game, capturing those connected pass pawns, Ju Wenjun loses on time.
Yeah. And yes, Ju and Jun, they're not having a good start, losing 2 games, losing on time just when she was back in and holding that position. But now you have to deal with the position in front of you. And we're seeing Ju and Jun go for a favorite of hers, just developing with the pawns, fianchetto, and now knight to e4. Queen to b3 is the response to that, targeting the b7 pawn. And see whether there's been any games. Yeah, 1 game in the database. Queen to b6 is a natural response for black.
I'm still so shocked what we have just witnessed and how Ju Wenjun was just back in that endgame, defending well, but that 1 second increment is so little to execute your moves that she ends up losing on time. And she had issues with time management in the first game as well. So I think she's really feeling the pressure on the clock. And time management wise, Alice has definitely been dominating this match. And 2-0. What a start for the 16-year-old prodigy from the United States, who is one of the underdogs in the event. But I think we already said it before the match that this could be an upset today. And she's saying, of course it could be an upset. I'm leading 2-0.
Yeah. And, one of the things that I just wanted to mention, Anna, about playing internet chess is you got to have a good internet connection. You got to make sure that is running to the max. It has to be quick, because the last thing you want is to be playing with a slow connection and have that lag. Trust me, I have lost loads of games because I have been playing with 1 bar on my mobile. And then I'm like, what happened there? I lost.
Do not do that.
No, do not do that.
Yeah, that is a really good point, and we are hoping that both players have stable internet connection. Important for a speed chess championship for sure. For Ju Wenjun, it's important that she's now in a better position. Again, the queens are off of the board, but white has slight pressure through the semi-open a file, and with the activity of her pieces, a knight could jump to e5, for instance, right now, or bring the other rook as well into the game. And also a bit more time for Ju Wenjun. So as long as I think she can hold on to that time advantage or keep the time roughly equal, she should be okay. But we're going to now see Alice also trying to activate her pieces. And this is one of those moves that is an important one. Now dropping the other knight back to guard the b7 pawn. She has been using her knights really well, I feel like, in both games. Both of the previous games, all the knight maneuvers and spotting tactical opportunities with the knights.
Yes, and this is one of the whole key ideas in this particular opening. You accept the double pawns. Point is that you get these open line for the rooks, and also a lot of pressure against b7. And it's just a case of quick maths. And I love the way that Alice has defended b7, because if she'd been forced to defend with a rook, you just argue that a knight on a5 worth 3, a rook on b8 tied to their defense is going to be worth 5. Maths means that you are better. But f6, drive the knight from e5 back. And now choice. Do you want to go knight to c4? I think I would be going in that direction. And there you go, because you want to be encouraging black to correct your pawn structure. With knight takes knight, you recapture with a b pawn. And if you don't do that, knight takes knight followed by knight takes b7. And if that pawn on b7 falls, the whole position just collapses for Alice. So I gotta say, Alice under some pressure here.
Certainly pressure. And as you said, you don't want to be holding onto that pawn with the rook, but she might have to play rook to b8 because of the tactics on this diagonal. There was a threat of sacrificing on b7 and taking on c6 in several of the positions. Those tactics could have been working out well for white. So she does end up playing rook a to b8, overprotecting b7 also for the fact that this knight is being traded. So she needed a second defender. Once these knights are off of the board, it will be the rook holding onto the pawn. Can she activate her pieces in a way will be a big question for her, because she cannot just sit still and accept that her rook is forever doomed.
Yeah, and I'm a bit surprised by Wenjun's last move. I was expecting knight takes knight, followed by the knight going back to c4. Again, you just want to be correcting the pawn structure. But this one is also really, I'm going to say, sophisticated. Bishop to e1. What is that bishop doing? Well, it's going to go f3, e4, bishop f2. And you're like, haha, got my bishop primed and ready to target a7. And just again, note that the knight on a5 keeps the rook on b8 at bay. So rook to d8. Okay, well, questions are arising. Rook takes d4 in the air. And now here you go. e4, you've got a beautiful pawn center. And is Wenjun going to try to keep control? Is she going to go h3 just to make sure there's going to be no funky g4s in the air? But bishop f2, just sticking with the plan. And she's always got knight takes knight followed by knight to c4 in her back pocket.
Yeah, that was always in the air. That's why Alice now decides to move that knight to b5, put pressure on the d4 pawn. I wonder if she has any follow-ups, because it would be great if she could continue putting pressure on the central pawn of Wenjun, but there is no other piece that could come into the game unless you manage to double your rooks on the d file. But I'm a bit scared I'm stepping into some tactical patterns if I'm placing my rook here. But that's what she does. So we'll see, are there any tactics here for Wenjun or not? She takes on b6 and drops the knight back to c4 to attack b6.
Yeah, and yeah, you mentioned like tactical patterns. I'm also looking at this strategy side of things as well. You know, can you try to post up a knight to d6? That doesn't look like it's possible, but I'm also thinking that white can maybe just kind of go pawn heavy and, you know, go f4, just try to get a massive center. But decisions for Wenjun, one thing I've noticed about Wenjun is she's like a big builder. She likes to just improve her position as much as possible and plays all over on both sides of the board. The bishop relocating to f1. I like this idea. It didn't dawn on me at all, but it makes perfect sense.
It does make a lot of sense since that bishop was just sitting behind the pawn chain, so she's trying to activate the bishop through this diagonal. The knight goes to d6, which I'm not too keen on, since it will be helping the bishop to get into the game better through c4 or through h3. d5 is also a really powerful move to open up the diagonal of the f2 bishop. Now two of the minor pieces of Wenjun are attacking b6, so that was her whole idea of tearing open the position. Blue arrow suggesting bishop to h3. Does Wenjun see that that move is quite an unpleasant one for Alice? I think she will, because of the struggle here, that the knight is protected by the rook. The rook only has that one square on the d5, so bishop to h3 is a really, really strong move. You have to push g4 apparently after bishop h3 was not played. Instead, knight takes b6, logical as well, of course.
Yeah. Bishop h3, wow, what a move that would have been. But I can understand knight takes pawn as well, because there you're going to get the bishop pair, and that is going to be there with a whole heap of advantages. Also, there's a tremendous pressure against the knight on d6. So Alice maybe has to, I mean, it looks quite unpleasant, but I would be going bishop takes knight and gritting my teeth and maybe doing badly after that one. I don't see an alternative. Bishop takes knight is what I'm advocating, and it's not pleasant. Oh, I didn't think this was possible, because I thought
again,
there's just
bishop
way
to
too much.
h3.
Yeah, there's just way too
Again,
much
the same
pressure.
pattern. Too much pressure, and after bishop to h3, you need to hold on to that knight, so you have to push f5. But after this capture, once the pawn is on f5, there's just pins everywhere in Alice's position. Wenjun did not spot it. It was a second chance for her to find a bishop move to the edge of the board, would have been really strong. Instead, she's going for a very natural, logical continuation of wanting to double rooks on the d file. Also, seems to be great now that Alice didn't find the best continuation. This is tremendous pressure over the d file through that pin. I don't think that she'll be able to hold on to the material. The king will make it to e6 or e7, but this bishop coming to h3 is still on the cards.
It's still such an important factor, but Ju Wenjun has to spot it, and she's missed this whole opportunity twice. Okay, it lands, and now pawn takes pawn. That is gonna be game over for Alice, as we're seeing g5. But here you can go even pawn takes pawn. You can even go e5, or you can just, what else can you do? I mean, there's so many things. I'm thinking bishop takes g4. That's a funky move. Also, this one looks good enough. And bishop to c5 is the whole idea. Tie black down completely. And yes, bishop check.
Now bishop to c5 appears with the blue arrow. That is the best move. Decisive advantage for Ju Wenjun if she finds it. But she trades the rooks instead and then gives the check. Slightly inaccurate move order, giving some hope to Alice in the defense. It's still an unpleasant position, but it's not a decisive advantage anymore.
No, and if you look at the material, if you count that, it's still pretty much level as we're seeing checks. And Alice is holding on. Bishop goes to g6. Maybe she can try to pounce in on the g pawn. She has to move that light squared bishop. It's under fire. Where is Ju Wenjun going to go? Maybe she's going to go bishop to d3, try not to lose any time. But Alice now getting mobile with the rook. That's his dream square. And now maybe can you go rook takes b2? Just start
Alice
munching.
is back in the game. Now she has survived some really difficult moments in this game with Ju Wenjun not spotting the right way to keep the decisive advantage. She still has the pair of bishops, but now look how active Alice's pieces have become. The rook in the second rank, the knight giving checks. This knight will be hopping onto d4, targeting the b3 pawn, heading toward f3 as well, the h2 pawn hanging. Oh, but Alice plays instead bishop to f5, and now the evaluation bar is going to be swinging back and forth. And can she lose on time? Maybe now it's this time Alice who is under huge time pressure.
Yeah, Alice is definitely feeling the heat there on the clock. Just 1 second, and she's going to be relying on that increment as the king comes. Now it's just chaos on the board as the knight drops back. And now it's all about the kingside pawns as they start slowly advancing. But with 12 seconds, it's not easy to hold your nerve as Alice keeps finding those tricky moves. Knight to e3 is the threat. Knight c3 comes, and isn't that... Oh, I thought I was going to be dropping. No, king takes rook. Oh, no.
Wow.
And now
Alice is up on exchange now. With 1 second on the clock, she now has a winning position. She turned the tables completely in this game 3 against Ju Wenjun, but the time situation is still 2 seconds versus 10 seconds, 1 second increment. Only Alice has been playing so quickly.
Yeah, and the play is just moving super quickly. And again, now it is Ju Wenjun who's on the back foot. She's going to be kicking herself because she had a completely winning position. Now it's not. Now it's back to losing again. And Ju Wenjun is the one with 1 second on the clock. She has to play so quickly. Rook to c4, it's coming. And that bishop is going to be overextended. And they've got to move. And now you can start going like that, going for the h pawn. And it is difficult. And look at how Alice, she's playing all the best moves with no time on the clock.
With no time on the clock and gaining time somehow with a 1 second increment, she's managed to go up to 5 seconds from 1 second on the timer for her. She's been playing extremely well, very precisely, under tremendous time pressure. It's incredible to witness.
Yeah, and now she's saying, I got the h pawn under control. Now it's time for me to hunt the king. The rook is, okay, there goes a pawn. And with that, it's going to be the game. And Alice moves to a hat trick, winning 3 games in a row. And with just 7 minutes and 42, now down to 40 seconds of the 5+1 portion remaining, well, Ju Wenjun, she's going to have to strike back if she wants to just get any semblance of a positive emotion as she goes into the 3+1.
This is incredible. 3-0. 16-year-old Alice Lee is taking down the 5-time women's world champion, defending champion of the Women's Speeches Championship. Ju Wenjun has never lost a match in her 3 years of Women's Speeches Championship ever since she won it 2 years ago. Not a single match or single even segment lost. And now Alice Lee leading 3-0. 3-0. It's insane. Like Ju Wenjun, she had a winning position in the previous game, but she could not convert it because Alice fought so well with no time on the clock and in a lost position.
Yeah. And what was really impressive was that at one point, Alice had a lost position and 1 second on the clock. And then she just completely converted that to a winning position and suddenly 5 seconds on the clock. And now Ju Wenjun is the one on with the black pieces. She is staring down the barrel of having no points. She will want to, for her, I think psychologically, win this one in order to feel like, okay, I'm ready to go to the 3+1. As we're seeing now, Alice just taking the space, trying to get a clamp with c5, knight to d6 incoming. And this bishop on g2, such a good piece.
Beautiful double fianchetto. Both of her bishops are so active. This pawn push is very annoying to face. And I'm really curious how Ju Wenjun will handle this after the disappointment of the first 3 games not going her way, especially the previous one where she was completely lost. It was a decisive winning advantage at several moments of the game. It wasn't just a one move thing. It was several moments where she could have converted it into a full point. Missed her chance, and now she has to defend this position with a monster knight sitting on d6. You either trade this knight and accept that a passed pawn, will be on d6 instead, or you accept this knight to stay alive. But that is so hard to have a situation where the b7 pawn is constantly attacked. Your pieces are so limited. She pushes b6, but now blue arrow is suggesting if the knight drops back to c4, it is very tough for Ju Wenjun because of the diagonal, putting pressure on d7 as well. Tactics would have been incoming, but never mind. Jovi, we have a trade, and now a trade on b6 as well. Alice playing it a bit more solid.
Yeah, and that was actually a really instructive moment to go back with the knight in order to just threaten rook takes bishop. But that is gone. And now we're seeing this position where I'm going to say white still has a small edge just because of the better bishops. But after the knight going back to d4, then we're seeing Ju Wenjun say, hang on a second, she's going to post up a knight to c4. Knights just want good homes. I mean, I love that expression, and I think it's such a key one as well. You want one preferably supported by a pawn. You also want to be targeting your opponent's pawns. So are we going to be seeing knight to c4 there from Ju Wenjun, or is she simply going to go bishop to f6 and say, hey, I will just also get my bishop on the long diagonal?
Good question what she'll do, but now she has her chances, and the position could become unpleasant for Alice. She now needs to decide where to place her rook. She goes to the c5 instead of trying to keep it on the d5. Both made sense, of course. And the question for Ju Wenjun is there a follow-up? Can she continue with powerful moves, for instance, bishop to a3 to keep chasing this rook? Bishop to f6 makes sense as well to put pressure on the knight on d4. e3 could be a follow-up to protect the knight. I don't think it really has much of a chance to just jump away unless you want to go back to f3.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with you. Don't really want to be stepping back. Anchor that knight with a pawn. e3 is what I would be advocating. And again, the knight on d4 is very nicely placed as well because it keeps the knight on a5 honest. You've got ideas of knight c6 in the air one time. I know the c6 is heavily covered, but it's always there. And we do see e3, and yeah, Ju Wenjun, she's got a great feel for where the pieces should go. And she's like, yeah, the rooks belong on the C line. And now h5, just grabbing some space and making sure the king has a nice little hiding place on h7.
That's what's happening indeed. I feel like the knight of black will be jumping toward the c4 square, most likely. That would be an improvement, going from the edge to a more active location. Other moves could be to try to double rooks on the c5. That's what Ju Wenjun chooses to do, rook to c5. follow-up will be rook to c8, and this pin on the c3 bishop is really unpleasant. So I think it's time for Alice to deal with it. She goes back to e2 with the knight, offering a bishop trade and guarding her c1 rook at the same time.
And you know what, Anna, I just gotta say, look at Alice. She looks like she's in boss mode, right? She's leaning back far away. She's just simply making the moves quickly, confidently. It feels like, yeah, I'm not flustered one bit as the knight just jumps into c5, making use of that tactical opportunity, because that knight cannot be taken on account of the loose rook on b8.
And she's back in the game, even though Wenjun had a slight pressure in the middle game. Now Alice has again managed to find a way to get fully out of it. I am just as impressed as you, Joey, with Alice's confidence and how quickly she chooses to go for some really complex variations, and her calculation, the way she spots the tactical opportunities, but also the way she finds resources in difficult positions. And now with this knight jump, the bishop coming back to e2, she's still maintaining the situation where the knight is untouchable because of the pin, and black can't really make progress in a match situation where it's 3-0, and this is the final game of the 5+1, 1 minute left of the 5-minute 1 second increment blitz segment, and Alice Lee, 16-year-old American prodigy, is leading 3-0 against the women's world champion.
Yeah, and she's got a big threat with that last bishop retreat. The knight is going to come to a4, and okay, well, hang on a second. That knight can just drop back and start attacking the pawn. How are you going to defend that? And there is no answer. So that's it. Ju Wenjun will now have to defend this a pawn down. So big question, do you go rook takes b6? Or do you go knight takes b6 and voluntarily step into a pin? So we see Ju Wenjun, she's Alice going with knight takes pawn and not allowing any discovers with that knight. That's why she goes to b7. But can you not go bishop to f3 and ask the question again to the rook, where are you going to go?
I like it. Bishop to f3, bishop to a6. There's ways in which this rook can be tickled again, and it's not going to be easy for Ju Wenjun to deal with it. Bishop to f3 is on the board indeed. Where is the rook going? She chooses the c7 square, which probably is the best choice, but it's still blue arrow saying if the knight trades for the bishop, that's a better endgame for Alice. Rook to b2 is also logical, not allowing black to play rook to c2. A slight inaccuracy according to the computer because it gives a chance for black to activate her pieces now. A rook to c1 check and bishop to c6 seem to be the best follow-up.
Yeah, but what a dream start it's been for Alice. She's gone 3-0 up, and now she's in an endgame where she is a pawn to the good, no danger whatsoever. As we're seeing that in the 5+1 portion, this has gone like a dream. And I got to say, there's one small issue though for Alice in this particular position, and I don't know how easy it is to handle it, that this knight on b6 doesn't have a square it can jump to. Ideally, knight a4 is taken, can't go to c4, can only go to a8, but that's not the best idea. And now that bishop is being chased away, but Alice finding nice ideas again to try to transfer the situation into a different type of endgame. And big question though, can Ju Wenjun go rook takes rook and then try and trap this knight on b6?
That is a great question, and she's trying to keep the rooks on the board and trying to do something about that knight. As you have said, it is the one piece of Alice that seems to be a bit problematic. It's a very active knight, but it's not got anywhere to go from the b6 square. It looks like for now it is just a matter of holding on to that knight where it is, because at least the rook on b1 is guarding it. But how do you make progress and how do you make moves for white here? Both of them now below a minute, and things are heating up. Even though it's only a few pieces left in this endgame, things are heating up because of this situation where the b6 knight doesn't have anywhere to go. It might become a target of black's pieces. Alice goes to d1 with her bishop.
Yeah, and you can see Alice actually struggling with this issue as well. She could have gone rook to b2 just to control the second rank, but bishop to d1 is her big idea, make sure that the rook doesn't get to c2. But actions do have consequences, and now bishop to c6 giving a check. Maybe the bishop is going to go back. A draw is good for Zhu Wenjun, considering she is a pawn down, but Alice saying, actually, I'm going to break out. And now we have a change in the scenario as well. More trades.
More trades and pressure now through the diagonal. I love the fact that Alice didn't even consider repeating moves. She was like, no, I'm up a pawn. I'm going to push as much as I can. But her knight is now getting into trouble. This is what Jovi said earlier, that knight has nowhere to go. So after king to c7, you have to play rook to b1 as white because you have no other way of saving your piece.
Yeah, and if you do that, then the e-pawn is going to fall, but the knight goes to the edge of the board. Can simply be taken.
Alice is blundering her knight or counting on some counter chances here with the check.
Mm-hmm. She's banking on this, but any rook a7 is going to be met with rook c5, and now look at that extra piece is going to be defending all of black's pawns. But okay, it's not just about the position, it's also about the clock, it's also about whether the players can hold their nerves. As the rook comes to a7, there aren't too many pawns left on the board, so this is what's going to keep Alice's hopes of getting a draw alive. But this is going to be the final 5+1 game in this match, as the rook starts dancing, attacking the g6 pawn, and now the a pawn falls off, and this is all gonna go in Zhu Wenjun's favor.
Alice ends up losing on time, but the position also was winning for Zhu Wenjun after the check, knight coming to g4. But what a start! Even despite this last loss for Alice Lee, she is the one who is leading the match 3-1 against the defending women's chess champion and 5-time women's world champion Zhu Wenjun. The 16-year-old American prodigy is showing why she is one of the favorites when it comes to underdogs, who can upset whom. And Alice Lee, we called it earlier, and I think many of the viewers called it too. If anyone can upset Zhu Wenjun, it might just be Alice Lee.
It might just be Alice. And one thing Alice did very well is that she went on a 3-game win streak. And that is perhaps going to be super important. But we're talking about streaks. I have good news for anyone who has accidentally killed a massive Chess.com streak. That would include yours truly. Your all-time highest number is coming back to celebrate International Chess Day. Playing a game, solving a puzzle, or completing a lesson this week will instantly restore your longest ever historical streak. It's that easy. Plus, Chess.com is running a diamond membership giveaway right now. All you have to do is drop a screenshot of your revived streak or tell us the craziest, weirdest place you've ever played a game to keep it alive. So hit !streaks in chat right now to get your max streak back and enter the giveaway. And on that note, we're going to be back with a 3+1 right after this break. Hi, I'm International Master Ivanka Hauske, and welcome to my first course for Chessable, starting out the Caro-Kann. Light square strategy is what I like to call it. You put your pawns on light squares, you develop your pieces, and then when the time is right, you break out in the center. What I need you to do is get in the focus of quick development. Knight takes g7, check is possible, king moves to f8, attacking the knight, and now after knight to h5, what we want to be doing is first asking that question to the knight, because white can immediately go wrong with knight to e2. We simply go knight to b4, and this bishop and the knight have orchestrated a sneak attack against c2, and now black is totally winning. There are lifelines to help you remember the piece configurations, there are guidelines, there are cautionary tales, and of course there are my trademark phrases, all to help you get a good Caro-Kann.
What? We're going tricky! Hey guys, we're going tricky! Come on! Revive your longest streak now on Chess.com.
Where is everybody? Not many. Something is good at chess. I think my cooking probably has potential because I didn't cook enough. But I think when I start, I have a good talent on it. No, but maybe from a beginner to amateur, like that. But I didn't try far. I think 2,000, like a decent number, like. Yeah, I think when I was younger, I was more lazy, probably, like didn't really training so hard in chess, and it's have no idea like how to becoming a professional chess player. But then I play more tournaments, and then I also have more experience and know how to training better. I think I'll tell myself if I'm lost one game or two game, then probably just don't lost another one. No, just try to maybe change something, maybe change the time, or you just try to play faster, or try to different style. Try to change the opening. I didn't have much time on the campus life. So basically I become a professional chess player when I was a teenager. So I just focus in chess, and probably that part of life I don't have it. But also I think chess also brought me so many other things. So I think I'm very lucky to becoming a pro chess player. Yeah.
And we are back with a 3+1, which means one thing: the intensity is gonna be climbing. Well, big question for Wenjun. Can she fight back? Can she build herself a cushion? Because we all know that Alice Lee, when it comes to the bullets, she is almost untouchable, having already crossed the 3,000 barrier mark. Anna, what do we think? Wenjun, she is going into the 3+1 on the back of a victory. Can she extend or just try to catch up?
She certainly needs to try her very best, because at the moment, this match has been absolutely ruled by the 16-year-old American star Alice Lee, who started with a 3-win streak, and only the last game went in Wenjun's favor in the 5+1. You are so right that in bullet, Alice is clearly the favorite. She has been the only woman in history who has ever gotten to break the 3,000 rating barrier in bullet on Chess.com. So Wenjun, she has to turn the tables, and she has to turn the script of this match in the 3+1. Will she be able to do it is another question, because Alice has been so quick, so confident, and spotting tactical opportunities at the light of speed. keeping her cool even in losing positions and with no time on the clock. So this is going to be a really tough battle for the women's world champion, I feel, to try to make a comeback. It's a 2-point deficit, and 3+1, I think, is the segment that will decide the fate of this match. I would not count on Bullet to turn the tables around.
Yeah, I completely agree. And the thing is, if Wenjun manages to win, but only has she only manages to even the score, even maybe just +1. Like Alice is so good in the bullet that I do think Alice is still going to be the favorite going into there. So the thing is for Ju Wenjun, she has to win, and she has to win big, as we're seeing now a Slav being played on our screens, and now with the bishop coming out to G5. This is one of the sharpest openings. The bishop to E7. There's not going to be any taking on C4 shenanigans. And what Black is playing for here is just simply just to ask the question to the bishop and going for a well-timed C4 capture. So bishop to F4. I was once dabbling with this type of opening as Black, and no one ever played bishop to F4 against me. They all go in bishop H4. But it was an interesting question because you're just saying, hey, the bishop on E7 is passive, and we're seeing that there is no decisions made on C4, instead a capture on D5. And now what is going to be the response? Is queen A5, bishop to B4? There's going to be perhaps some pressure with a pin against the king on E1.
And that's exactly what's happening. I only see one game in the database for this, and after queen b3, I think we're in a completely new territory by Alice, tearing open the position because White's king is still in the middle of the board. So it's very instructive that you got to try to open up the position, especially since White is still not castled, king still in the middle of the board, counting on this pin as one of her main resource. Sorry that I clicked on the wrong button. It happens to me all the time. But now we do see the knight coming to f6, giving some space to the bishop as well for development. I'm curious if that's what we're going to see, just simply bishop to d7, and the bishop might be going to the c6 square. Knight e5 is unpleasant for that bishop maneuver, but Alice says I don't mind it at all, and she still might want to place that bishop there because there's just so much pressure otherwise on b7.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. The bishop will come to c6, and questions actually, because after knight takes bishop, which looks like it's a great move, but on the other hand, Black is the one who gets counterplay on the c line. You have the possibility of going c5, and still it's going to be a question of whether White's two bishops is going to offset the pawn weakness that is there going to be on d4. So yeah, a very tense position, I'm going to be saying. But yeah, it's very nice to see that Ju Wenjun, she has her supporters and people are cheering. I swear it does make a difference, when you have people cheering for you. You kind of feel the energy, you get those vibes.
I think it's really important. So thanks so much to our viewers and all the fans out there rooting for Ju Wenjun, rooting for Alice Lee, helping us here with the show as well, because your comments, of course, are the one that create the main positive energy in our chat. So thank you for all the good vibes and rooting for both of these ladies who are trying their best here in the top online chess event for the best female players in the world. This is the quarterfinals of the Women's Speed Championships, one of the final quarterfinals. And we do see Alice bringing out her rook to the d5, putting pressure on Ju Wenjun's central pawn.
Yeah, and actually I was going to say that I think White's position is a little bit problematic on account of this bishop on g3, which is really not where it should be. If it were on e3, it would be cementing the center together, but as it stands, it's not there, as Alice quickly goes on the counterattack. This is such a thing that the younger generation are so quick and good at doing. You attack a piece, they will counterattack. But this does require good calculation as the rook comes in to defend the bishop on d3. And this is given a question mark. And to my eyes, I'm feeling that that's a little bit harsh, because I don't see what's wrong with that move unless it just allows bishop to e5.
It seems that it's being criticized because of some tactical patterns with bishop to c7. Not the easiest of moves, because normally that bishop wouldn't be standing well on c7, but now the fact is that this rook on d8 is tied to the defense of the c8 rook, so you're going to have to move this rook to e8 or back to f8. I'm not sure if Wenjun will go for that or something else. This is a lot more natural to bring your remaining rook into the game onto an open file and double down on the b file.
Yeah, to just get control over that square. The pawn on a2 is untouchable because the bishop is loose there on e7. This also makes a lot of sense. Also, this whole idea of bishop to c7 is not going to be running away. You can do it right now. And the rook is not going to be able to step up to d7 because the rook on c8 is hanging. But no. Apparently, this is the wrong direction, even though it's quite natural, because the big idea is to go bishop takes knight and g5. Well, white certainly poked the king side, got a weakness, and I like the way that Wenjun is playing. But watch for the clock.
The valuation bar suddenly jumped hugely in favor of white after this capture on a2, so it must have a refutation, and that being that the queen of Alice is trapped. There is nowhere to go after rook to a1, and that's exactly what Wenjun has just played.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, the queen can go to b2. No, it cannot, because there's a queen on b7, eyeballing that square. So Alice is definitely going to be losing this one. She's in big trouble. She's going to have to give up the queen for the rook, and it's an open position here. So it's going to be very difficult to survive this one. You can't take the pawn on d4 because there is, of course, the rook on c8 that is hanging. And as Anna's pointing out, there's rook takes a7 on the menu, followed by queen to f7. Queen takes rook, and there you see, and the c-pawn is also going to be falling as well. You don't even need to rush with it. You can go bishop to d6. That is also good enough. Oh, look at this. And it's curtains.
It is curtains, and this is the only game so far where Alice has made a big mistake. We haven't seen any blunders by actually either of the players. It was inaccuracies, not big mistakes, but this was a huge one. Not seeing the rook move that blundered her queen away. It trapped the queen on the a2 square, and this is going to be a much needed win for Wenjun, who now has 2 queens on the board, and Alice is still fighting. She's still trying at least to get some time off of the overall match clock. So she's fighting on, because it also matters how much time do you spend from the overall match clock. Wenjun wins this game, 2nd win in a row for the Women's World Champion, who is now trailing by 1 point and 1 point only.
Yeah, and she's narrowed the gap with those 2 back-to-back victories. Alice now going into a Catalan, as we've seen the queen take the pawn, and this is very important. Black just posts up the bishop on the long diagonal, and I think it's actually a really interesting match strategy that Alice was doing. Yeah, because she's going to lose, but she's going to drag the game for as long as possible, because, like you say, it's going to be crunch time on the bullet, and if she can keep Wenjun at bay, or she lose her lead by 1 point or so, then Alice is going to be the clear favorite there, as we see her just reinforce the center. She doesn't worry about the bishop pair, because it's all about just keeping control over the center, and this bishop on g2 is going to be such a beautiful piece. So there's no way the bishop on e4 wanted to be kicked out from this diagonal, so that's why we're seeing bishop takes c3, pawn takes, and now I'm expecting h6, asking the questions.
It's exactly what happened after the trade on f6. We see knight to d2, offering a trade of the light squared bishops as well. I think that will be taken. And after king takes g2, we are left with just heavy pieces and a knight each.
Yeah, and it feels like a very gentle game. It's going to take on a positional nature, but again, things are certainly building up, because I gotta say that if Wenjun does not break, then basically Alice does have a very pleasant position, as we're seeing the queens get traded off, and white is the one who has the roads to infiltrate. You just want to be able to maneuver the pieces so that they stand better. And if black is cramped, you always get this feeling of unpleasantness that often leads one to take rash decisions. And I kind of use that generally, even though I probably should say I take those rash decisions. I don't like sitting still.
I would be the same, Joey. So I think at least the two of us do it. So that's already quite general, right?
Yeah. I think there's a lot of us in that club, Can't sit still. Gotta move. As the knights, she's offering a trade. And this is excellent strategy. I really like the way that Alice is playing. Her big thing is that, c5 ain't going to come. And if c5 is not coming, then it does allow white to just at least start pressurizing the c7 point. They will be the one making use of the half open B line. a4, a5 is always in the air. So very instructive play there from Alice.
Really instructive, and it also made Wenjun spend quite some time in that moment. She trades on c4 and now pushes pawn to c5. I think Alice will take this to force black to take with the pawn. Instead, actually, no, she's saying, I'm going to place my rook on the b file, and then I'm ready to take on c5 and counter your rook.
Yeah, and nice play there from Wenjun, understanding that she had to break out. And now just improving the queen in order just to tie everything together. And like you say, it's decision time. Take the pawn is one idea. a5 was another move that I was considering, but I didn't feel like it was the best. But actually, I got to admit, not because of queen to d5. I was just thinking of pawn takes pawn.
This rook is feeling quite stuck on c4. That's why queen to d5 would have been a great move. And I think that's why Alice is trying to make space for the rook with the pawn push. But here, the computer is being very critical of this instead of queen to d5, saying that now the rook has space. So this is a bit of a mischance by Wenjun. It wasn't the winning move, but it would have been to try to counter this rook on c4. She takes on d4, and now there's couple of options. You can take on d4 with pawn, with rook, or you can also take on b6. There were a lot of things to consider for Alice. She ends up taking with the c pawn on d4. And I think white is now trying to not only saving this rook from that stuck situation, but she's also very active. She might just end up doubling rooks on the c file. Rook a1 also makes sense to put pressure on the pawn immediately.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. White is going to be just doubling on the A line and just trying to force black on the passive, defending the pawn on a6. And I wonder whether black can just kind of go, well, hang on a second, I don't need to defend anything. Just go rook to b5, try to defend as actively as possible and try to activate this rook on d8. But Wenjun has to hurry, because if there's been a small weakness, it's been her play when the clock starts ticking down to 2 seconds, which is entirely understandable. I want to tell everyone, because very few people can be especially chill when the clock is down. As we see the queen step up, nice idea. The whole point is after queen takes queen, it's going to be rook takes pawn, and black is going to get active. Rook c6, beautiful move there from Alice.
Both of her rooks are targeting the doubled A pawns of Wenjun, and Wenjun is the one that's getting really low on time as well. She pushes e5 to open up the position and force the trade in the center. Queen takes d5 will be played at some point eventually, and we're going to see this rook endgame with 2 rooks for each. Alice about to win the pawn back.
Yeah, I think she might win the pawn back and as well get some minor investments as well. As okay, takes the pawn. Very nice decision as well, because she just keeps the all the heavy pieces on the boards. The queens are on, and often the side that wants to attack, they benefit from keeping the queens on the board. Now the pawn on a6 falls, and nice again decisions. Good defense there from Wenjun, as we see everything defending the pawn on a5.
And the queen stayed on the board, as you said, for the attacker. This is an asset. So Alice, having the queen on the board and the rook on the 7th rank, she has been putting pressure on the f7 pawn. If only she could also bring the 2nd rook onto the 7th rank. That would be quite an achievement. But this rook, of course, is not as easy to activate. Rook to c5, very logical. Alice is trying to bring the rook, and I think she's about to do it. I don't really see what's happening after the rooks coming to the 7th rank. Wenjun might have missed that it was not good enough to push the f-pawn. In fact, it made her position lost. Alice Lee wins yet another game and increases her lead by 2 points.
2 points. And yes, that f5 just showing how difficult it is just to be passive, be solid, sit still. That rash move just weakening the black king. And Ju Wenjun in trouble. We just have over 15 minutes remaining in the 3+1 portion. Remember, this is where Ju Wenjun is meant to be securing a lead. She's meant to be the one who is putting Alice on the defensive. And instead, it's a completely different narrative with Alice being the one with 2 points to the good, as we're seeing c5 and we're seeing a trade. And Ju Wenjun, she's coming with a match strategy of going for these isolated queen's pawns, but they haven't really worked for her. She hasn't managed to put any pressure on Alice.
Yes, it really has been the case that she goes for this structure, but Alice has been defending really well against the isolated pawn. I wonder if Ju Wenjun will at some point change her strategy or try to stick to it now with a different approach. She trades on d5 sooner than in other games, not keeping the isolated pawn structure, but instead the symmetrical central pawn structure, jumping to e5 with her knight. I'm expecting her to develop the bishop. She goes to e3.
Yeah, she goes to e3 and the queen comes to e2. And I just got flashbacks on Alice's match against Alexandra Kosteniuk, where the match strategy was to go h4. There was a lot of h4, h5s. It was happening every single moment. And now here it's a completely different kettle of fish. As we're seeing, the player is still very dynamic, but it's a different nature. And here, I gotta say that white does have a small edge just on account of the fact that the knight on e5 is, and the bishops, actually, it's more the bishops. The bishop on e6 is not the best piece. So that's why we're seeing f3 driving that knight away from its stronghold. Knight has got to move. And the knight on e5 is just annoying. There's no other word. It just sits there like a thorn in black's side.
It's a really unpleasant piece, and if you want to take it, then there will be a very unpleasant pawn instead, opening up the diagonal of the bishop and giving the pair of bishops to white. So that's why Alice is trying to not capture. As annoying as this beast is on e5, she's trading on c1 instead. I'm wondering what will be her follow-up, because her position, it needs a few improvements. This is one of those good ones where you also create a strong knight for yourself, jumping into e4 and maybe in the future f6. She says f5 instead, not caring about this e5 knight sitting there forever.
Yeah, white is saying to black, anything you can do, I can. No, sorry, black is saying to white, anything you can do, I can do better. Both sides are going to be very happy with their knights. It's going to be all about just utilizing those open lines. And yes, white does have control over the c line, but this bishop on d6 is such a fabulous piece. It's just preventing anything from infiltrating, as we see queen to b8 and h3. Both sides just very solid now, I'm going to say. There's almost perfect symmetry.
Almost perfect symmetry indeed, with the rooks being traded now on the c file. I think the black queen might be coming to the c file to replace the rook, queen to c8. And it's a really, really logical move. And now, is there any follow-ups? There's no entry square on the c file for the black queen, but there's also no entry square here for the white queen, unless there could be some annoying things with queen to g6. But at the moment, it looks like everything is very balanced, everything well protected in both white's and black's position.
Yeah, and I was also looking at queen to g6 ideas. I was also looking at g4, but that's such a reckless move. I'm not sure whether you want to be playing that. Queen to g6, I gotta say, is very, very natural. Improve, maximize your queen, make your opponent's pieces passive. I love that move. And what is the idea with bishop to b4? Is it just to go bishop to d2? It's a bit mysterious to me.
It does feel a bit mysterious, and feels mysterious if you're trying to trade the bishop of white that is the so-called bad bishop. When we compare these two bishops, the light square bishop of white is the more active one. The other one is stuck behind a pawn chain. So I'm not exactly sure what was the idea. Maybe Alice just wanted some more space for her pieces as she's moving now the queen toward the king side in order to perhaps meet queen g6 with offering a queen trade. I'm not sure if that's her idea or not. We will see now, since the white queen is on g6. It's quite annoying, and she does play queen to f6.
Yeah. And it is good defensive strategy that when you're feeling the pressure against your king, that you trade off queens. Queens are fabulous attackers, and there is no trade anymore, as the king just was forced to dodge that check. But white is the one making the improvements, and bishop h5, bishop to g6 incoming. So watch out, Alice. Be careful, because you got to take some defensive measures. And how to fight that one, actually, aside from going g6?
I don't see another defense other than pushing the pawn or trying to continuously chase the queen. So to keep offering queen trades and say that, okay, if you don't want to trade, you're going to have to block the square where your bishop was heading. So it might be the queen trade offer that is a nice resource for Alice, but she only has 30 seconds to decide, and she drops the bishop back, which is not a way to go. The blue arrow saying that the bishop move of Wenjun is extremely strong, threatening bishop g6, and the white's attack is extremely powerful, only a handful of pieces. But how do you stop this attack with the bishop coming to g6 and the king is almost checkmated?
Almost checkmate, but it is not quite, because that knight on d6, such a critical defender, covering the f7 point. The queen moves, and maybe got ideas of just utilizing this bishop on e3, which is not working. Okay, seconds left for our players as the a7 pawn falls off, and the knight just getting mobile. It's going to be about who can handle their nerves, as we see a bishop for knight trade, and well, the black queen centralizes itself, and Wenjun, she does have the better of the position, but it's opposite colors. And now could the queens come off? And will that be sufficient for a draw? Well, we're seeing instead that Alice is just holding firm on the light squares.
She's holding firm and now ends up trading the queens, placing the bishop on d5. So opposite color bishop endgame. Oftentimes it leads to draw even with an extra pawn or two if you are able to block the opponent's pawns on the color of your bishops. This is exactly what Alice is doing, and she has defended so precisely in a tough position. This was a really powerful attack by Wenjun a couple of moves ago, and now we see a draw by repetition. What a save by Alice Lee.
Advantage, and we have just 7 minutes and 30 seconds in the 3+1 portion remaining, as we're seeing the pawn go to a3. It's a BOGO Indian, a3 being the move, so still very much in the realms of theory. Black can play b takes a3, queen e7. I think even knights has moved out, but okay, we're seeing b takes a3, rook takes a3, and we're seeing Alice just go for her trusted fianchetto setup. And as we see, white is the one who has more comfortable with space in the center, and black is the one who has a very solid position and is just going to focus on developing before just breaking out.
That's exactly what's going to happen, and a6 is an important move. We see this structure very often in the Sicilian defense as well, where the pawns are on the 6th rank guarding crucial squares. In this case, a6 was against a knight jump to b5, and now the black queen is ready to go to c7. The rooks are connected. They'll be coming oftentimes to the queen side, to the c file, to the b file, and putting some pressure on this c4 pawn as well. More space for white, but very difficult to break through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And more space is really good for your pieces to maneuver, but it also means more responsibility. You got to be covering the squares, so you got to have an eye over the c4 pawn. You've also got to make sure that you control black's pawn breaks. As we see, trade of pieces, that usually favors the more cramped side, because they suddenly have a lot more space to maneuver. The pieces are not fighting with each other, and the knight just coming to f6, forcing more trades. And I still got to say, I like White's position because the pawn on a6 is a weakness. It's unsupported, but it should ultimately be okay for Black, as we see d5. Wenjun says no queen trades.
No queen trades. She's not interested. Then the queen is coming back to d3. All the heavy pieces of Alice are attacking the a6 pawn. Therefore, Wenjun is pushing a5. It is balanced according to the computer, but I think in a blitz game, any result could come from this position. It's definitely not drawish, with the rook now putting pressure on the b6 pawn, and on the b5, the queen is threatening to go to b5 and put yet another piece against this b6 pawn.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. You know, White does have the targets. Pawn on b6, pawn on d5. Also some strong squares to hand. I'm thinking, yeah, knight to e5 coming in. So I like White's position, and it does feel like White is the one that's playing for those two results, you know, win or a draw. But Ju Wenjun, she is trailing by 2 points in this match. So it's very important for her at least to start going a bit more on the offensive here. But whether that position merits such an attitude, I don't know.
It's quite difficult for Wenjun to find an active counterplay here. She could place the knight on e4, but then knight e5 is coming anyway. And what's the follow-up? How to prevent the attack of White with queen b5 against the pawn? And what is it that Black can do? It's knight e4 for sure. She plays that, but the follow-up will be more crucial. Where do you place the rook after knight to e5, and how do you hold on to all the pawns?
Exactly. I mean, this is the thing. Like, if a knight posts up to e5, you're like, are you gonna hold the c line, or are you gonna go rook h6? Anyway, that's irrelevant, because instead, queen to b5, blue arrow saying that the way to defend the pawn on d5 is to actually go knight to d6, relying on tactics, because you cannot take d5 because of rook to c1, and that would be a very unpleasant discovered check. And Ju Wenjun now under the minute. Is she going to find this move just to chase that queen away from that beautiful outpost?
She has to find it, and maybe this is something that Alice missed, and that's why it was better to place the knight on e5 first and then the queen on b5. But both of them have missed this tactical opportunity, and now knight e5 is a very different move. Also, rook takes a5 is on the cards because of the pin on the b file.
Yeah. And that does require some calculations, because Ju Wenjun is banking on ideas such as knight to d6 to keep things together. King just steps up to g2, just maintaining the tension in the position. And now just renewing the threat of queen takes d5. And rook comes up to c2, saying, hey, I'm willing to let the b6 pawn go, but you're going to have to defend the pawn on e2. And this is a nice move from Alice, just chasing away that knight. Now she can go knight to f3. Maybe we'll repeat the position, but instead she just improves the rook. Queen takes b6. And isn't she now going to be a pawn to the good? No, because the knight jumps into c4, attacks the pawn on b2 and the rook.
It's going to be quite interesting to see how this will evolve after the knight comes to d2. Again, it's a 2 rook and 1 knight each endgame. Not much material left on the board, but the time difference is quite significant. Very much of a time advantage for Alice. And this time pressure could make Ju Wenjun make mistakes. And this is maybe what we are just witnessing. She went for some tactics, but it's not working well for her. Unfortunately, she ends up having to lose a piece at the end of the line. So she wins the rook back, but Alice still has her knight on the board, and the pawns are not strong enough to fight against the knight. The king is coming into the game. The knight is about to block as well, and also to pick up those pawns.
Yeah, and this is the problem, right? Those pawns were not connected. They were not a fighting unit. Instead, they were just backups, as we're seeing Ju Wenjun. She's hinging everything. She's banking everything on the power of the A pawn. And Ju Wenjun, just 5 seconds left on the clock. And Alice just keeping perfect control. And Alice is the winner there, and she extends her lead. There'll still be one game remaining in the 3+1 portion, but for Ju Wenjun, it is almost a desperate situation. She needs to win this one if she wants to keep her hopes alive in this match, and she wants to defend her WSCC title.
This is an incredible fight that they've been putting on, but also an incredible score by Alice Lee, the 3-point lead, with this game being the final one in the 3+1 blitz. And what is next as a segment is 15 minutes of bullet, where we do think that Alice is clearly a favorite, having been the only female player in history who has crossed the 3,000 rating barrier in bullet on Chess.com. So the fact that she's leading the match, and it's not even bullet yet, this is absolutely incredible. 16-year-old Alice Lee, youngest participant in the WSCC, and she is about to produce a major upset if she keeps her cool in this final blitz game.
Yeah, and she's leaning forward. It's the first time I've seen her lean forward in the chair, and she's just working out the calculations, because does she have e4? This is the big question. There's a pin in town, and sure enough, she finds it. And Alice, fresh off her success at the US Juniors, now she is finding all of those moves. E4. The whole point, knight takes knight, is going to be met by bishop takes bishop, attacking the rook, and also the knight still on prise, also saying thank you very much for the dark squares. And Ju Wenjun, defending WSCC champion, is in trouble here, because either she's going to give up the bishop pair, or she's going to find herself with a weak pawn structure.
What an incredible way of just saying, I'm leading in a match, but I want more. I want it to be a 4-point lead heading into the portion, the bullet, where I'm supposed to be the favorite. So what a statement by Alice Lee, that she is going for an aggressive, dynamic approach in every single game. Didn't matter if she's playing with the white or black pieces. She's just absolutely going for it. And not respecting that her opponent is a women's world champion. She respects her for sure, but over the board, she's trying to show that she is very much ready for this challenge. And for Ju Wenjun, what do you play here to stay in the game, to keep your chances alive in this final blitz game? She has to find a way to at least keep the game somewhat more complex.
Yes, and she is definitely thinking about that as she's using up the time. She's working out, is it possible to go knight d takes e4? Should she go that direction? Should she go like queen to c1, accept like her pawn structure will be like, yeah, but I don't think she's going to take that. Maybe she's going to embrace the complications after knight takes pawn, but she can't use up too much of her time. Anna, instead, she does say she's going to go for that inferior pawn structure, and Alice leans in for the kill, because you can take that pawn and then you can jump in with your knight, and that pawn on d3 is going to be such a huge target.
It's a very weak pawn, and the square itself is weak as well. So with the knight coming to b4 after trade. Interesting though that Alice doesn't take on d3. She's banking on a different idea. She's saying that you cannot touch my e3 pawn, because when I take on e3, that's a knight fork. The problem here for Alice is that this trade is not forced. I'm expecting Ju Wenjun to jump away with the knight. Not too many good squares available, but knight to c4 does seem to be logical, to put pressure on the e3 pawn in that way. And she chooses the e4 square, which again is still logical, but it does give the e3 square to Alice's knight. I'm not sure if that immediately is a problem, but it's in the air, and the knight will be coming to e3. The other knight could be coming from e5 to g4. Again, those knights will be really, really dangerous.
They will be dangerous. And one thing I was going to say, don't get seduced by, it's very tempting to go bishop to d4 and go, hello, bishop takes rook on the agenda. But don't be tempted by that, because yes, you might be winning the exchange. However, you are conceding all of the dark squares, and this bishop on b2 will become a monster. So instead, utilize that chance, go knight to e5. I love that move, and I love the way that Alice found e3. That was something that wasn't on my radar, the knight coming into e3 first. Maybe she's going to be taking off that bishop. Yes, she's weakening the protection around white's king, and she's got this idea of going knight to e5, knight to g4 in the air. And there we see it in motion. She wants control over the dark squares, and Ju Wenjun's in trouble again, has to play very accurately and just has under 20 seconds on the clock as she just drops that knight back, covering e3 and getting ready to go bishop takes bishop when the opportunity presents itself.
She finds this move and she needs to somehow parry the threats over the dark squares and trade this bishop. That's why the knight going to the back rank was really important. But counter capture here, instead of taking the bishop, Alice says, I'm going to take on e4, but that double exclamation mark for Ju Wenjun, keeping the bishop alive. And who will be attacking on the dark squares? Now it is white, who will have checkmate threats on the dark squares. So that was that was a moment of imprecision by Alice. She didn't find the best way to continue. It was crucial to capture the bishop because now it is quite an unpleasant piece to face the queen and bishop battery.
Exactly, and it's going to be death by dark squares here for black. The queen is going to come to h6. Okay, queen to c3, same ideas, and now the knight's going to jump into e4. But yes, Ju Wenjun doesn't have too much time on the clock, but the moves, they just are crying out to be played. Alice, she is defending like a lioness, but how is she going to be handling this? Rook takes knight. Alice just finding those only moves. Still very dangerous position though for Alice, as those dark squares are very sensitive, but instead she starts taking over on the light squares, threatening checkmate.
No, black is winning and Ju Wenjun is also low on time. She ends up losing on time, but the position was already winning for Alice. What an incredible match this has been so far for the 16-year-old American star, who is leading by a huge margin against the defending champion. And the bullet portion, we think, is where Alice can shine even more. What an incredible start to finish in the Blitz, Jovi, and 4-point lead for Alice Lee in the quarterfinals.
4-point lead. Like, Alice has gone on a monster run, from start to finish. 4 points. I mean, who would have thought? The WSCC up until now has been Ju Wenjun's tournament. She's won every single match that she's played. Well, now Alice Lee just bringing the cinema to the board. And speaking of cinema, well, the best players in the world, well, they tend to bring the fire. But you can watch Magnus, Hikaru, and the world's best battle it out for a massive $1.5 million prize pool at the Esports World Cup in Paris. The action runs from August 11th to the 15th, but heads up, the Grand Finals are officially sold out. There are only a very limited number of tickets remaining for the earlier days, and they are going fast. So type !EWC in the chat and use code CHESS15 to get 15% off the last remaining tickets. You gotta be quick if you want to be there. And we are going to be back with the 1+1 right after this break.
What? We're going tricky! Hey guys, we're going tricky! Come on! You can do it! We're going tricky with the green part!
Revive your longest streak now on Chess.com.
Where is everybody?
I don't know, a recent one is that I can play any opening, because before I'd just be very sure that I need to look at a line for 10 hours on end, but now I'm okay, I guess I just need to look at it for maybe an hour or two, and then I can play it, and that kind of, I suppose, has helped me diversify my opening repertoire, and this is, I guess, even more the case for faster time controls. I think a lot of what I sacrificed maybe has to do with academics, because I definitely, while I was playing in a lot of chess events, I did homeschooling 1 year, I did online schooling for a year and a half, and I did go back to in-person school for my last couple of years of high school. But I think definitely, when I went back, I kind of realized that this is really a great experience just to be around other kids that I didn't get when I wasn't doing in-person school. So I think that was definitely something that I sacrificed, but I think it was worth it, because right now I've graduated high school, I'm going to a pretty good college, and yeah, I think in the next years ahead I'll still be able to engage in the academic space that I desire, even with all the chess that I've done. I guess during my younger years, I didn't really engage in the chess community as much. Of course, I went to the local chess club, and there were definitely a lot of really nice players there, but I don't think I really formed any social circles. But now I've come to really appreciate the friends I have in the chess community and the people that I know. So definitely when I was younger, that would have been nice to have, and also to help keep up motivation, especially during the pandemic years.
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't have such thoughts defend it. For me, it's every other player, just try to have everything is very new. I'm other players, just trying to win, trying to, qualify in the next stage. And I'll try to do my best. I just try to, try to be best and try to, challenge, try to improve myself. I think it is important to have always, have passion and the love, and also dedicated in chess. I think I'll play the 5+0. Then Ho will play 3+0, and then Baby Sarah will play 1+0. This is because I played some of them in the speed chess, so I choose them from speed chess. Yeah. I played against her maybe 2024, and then I think she's good at counterplay, and also she's very young, so she's good at tactics, and I think she can play good under very short time control.
And we are back, and it's crunch time for our players. Alice Lee, just 16 years old, is on the cusp of winning this match against reigning WSCC champion Zhu Wenjun. What stands in her way is 15 minutes over bullet chess, 1 minute plus 1 second per move. Anna, do you think Alice will close this one out, or will Zhu Wenjun fight back?
I think it's a huge chance for Alice. We said that we think she is the favorite in bullet. She has been the only female player in the history of Chess.com who ever crossed 3,000 rating in bullet on the platform. And she's leading the match with 4 points, meaning that Zhu Wenjun needs to win at least 4 games to tie the score within 15 minutes. It's quite a challenge for the Women's World Champion, and 16-year-old Alice Lee is looking great in her quest to qualify to the semifinals and eliminate the champion of Women's Beachers Championship, the reigning and defending champion, Ju Wenjun, from last year and from the previous year. She hasn't lost a single match, but today, Alice Lee might be making that very possible to take down the giant that Ju Wenjun is, the champion of Women's Beachers Championships.
Exactly. And she is staring down a 4-point deficit, and now it is a bullet. An area of the game where Alice is the one. She's the only player ever female player to have ever broken the 3,000 rating limit. And now the players, they are in action. They're about to begin. Alice begins with the white pieces, and now Alice is leaning forward. This is her time to shine. And Ju Wenjun, can she launch a comeback? It's a big task for her.
Huge task, but it all starts with one game at a time, and Ju Wenjun needs to take every game as a chance for a comeback and try to show on the scoreboard as well why she is the defending champion, the 5-time women's world champion. The game is about to start. I think we are waiting for a lift of hair, just making sure that the players are properly connected to the platform, ready to start a 15-minute final segment of this match in bullet.
And we have liftoff as we see Alice start with the white pieces, and Ju Wenjun, she is going for her Queen's Indian setup. This is something that Alice has shown that she's very comfortable in, as we see the knights come out, the bishop goes to d2. White is not afraid of knight takes bishop, because the big argument is that white is going to be there quick to take control of the center with e2, e4. And Ju Wenjun, she needs to win, so she takes risks with going f7, f5, supporting that knight. And we're still very much in the realms of theory, but f5 kind of fell out of fashion a few years ago, as we see the rook come to c1.
It has fallen out of fashion, but we do see the moves coming in quickly, so it might have been her preparation for the bullet specifically. Now after e5, e4 is a great move for Alice, and she finds it immediately, not allowing black to advance the pawn, but stopping it with e4 and getting that square for her knight in case of a trade.
Yeah, and we're seeing here that the reason why this is kind of out of fashion is because this bishop on b7 is not the best piece, and black is going to have to just use some more time in order to get that bishop into the game. So b4, a3, expanding on the queen side. The whole idea is just control the squares. But the position is still really, really tense, and it's super easy to go wrong, as white posts up a knight to b5, and black is the one with control of the center. For Ju Wenjun, I think this kind of strategy, although it's risky, but this is bullet chess and anything goes, as see 20 seconds there for Ju Wenjun.
Now with the queen being targeted, she drops it back to h4. We see a queen trade, but this endgame is promising for white now with the pawn hanging on c7, pressure on the f5 pawn as well, bishop h3, great move. This diagonal is all white's, and the pawn has just fallen.
Yeah, one pawn falls, and unfortunately for black, it's not the only pawn that will be falling off the board, because the c7 pawn departs, and now there's going to be pressure against the knight, and it's not a great start there for Ju Wenjun in the bullet, as every single piece is lined up against this knight on d7. You can even capture it all off and trade, but Alice Lee wins there. It was too much pressure for black to handle, and Alice extends her lead to 5 points, 2.5, 7.5.
5 points is a huge lead with only 12 minutes left in the match in the bullet. We're waiting for the second game to start, but what an incredibly difficult situation for the women's world champion and the defending women's speed chess champion, Ju Wenjun, who is the favorite here, but she hasn't really had a good match today. It's Alice Lee who has been sharp, quick, confident, and she's leading by 5 points. I think we might have some connection issues on either player's side, and hopefully that will be fixed, because they do need, as you said, Joey, good internet connection for online competitions.
Yes, You cannot be there playing with a slow connection, just losing those seconds due to lag. It's very important that everything is top notch and you always have a reserve. I remember back in the Champions Chess Tour, everyone was playing with a good internet connection and also backups as well, having internet connection on the mobile phones. Everything was being done so that everything was great. And Ju Wenjun now with the white pieces, she needs to win, and she needs to win quickly as well because there's just 12 minutes remaining in the match. Queen comes out to A4, and now there's going to be pressure against the C6 knight. White is going to be castling. Okay, there's going to be some trades for the time being, castling, and then the rooks are going to be lining very quickly up in the center. You do have to watch out because the white king is undefended there on H2. So that's why I was seeing Ju Wenjun go for F4, E4. Maybe going to go E5. Why not? But a check. Is Alice going to come in with a knight to G4? It is. And the queen H4 is coming next. Oh, Anna, this is looking quite shaky.
It is looking very shaky. 5-point lead for Alice Lee, and now she's again with the better position and this attacking chance here with the knight coming to F2. H3 was a must so that you give some room for your king on H2. But even then, it looks like after knight F2 and the queen coming to H4, you're going to have to end up sacrificing some material in order to survive. She's going back to G4. Because you cannot take this knight. That would be checkmate with queen h4. But look at this active king. King to g3. And according to the computer, white is better now. Your king is safe on g3.
Sometimes chess does not make sense, and this is one of them. You get the king out to g3, but the argument is that material, it does count for something, and now the white king is perfectly safe after that adventure, and now white is going to be just bringing home the bacon with control on the center. I love that idea. You gone king to g3, why not just go g4, start just beating black back, but g6 being played. Maybe bishop to e1 is the move that I would be going as well, and maybe now g4, but instead Ju Wenjun wants to fight for complete control. But remember, she has to be so quick, because if she wants to stay in this match, she just has to win 5 games and win them in the space of 9 minutes and 50 seconds.
Not an easy task. And even this game where Ju Wenjun had the upper hand after that king march, now Alice is back in the game. This could be anyone's game. And she has, again, fought so well in a difficult position as well. Now she's using all her pieces to attack the e5 pawn of Ju Wenjun. Lots of pressure on the central pawn, and now f6 as well.
Yeah, and the more trades as well, that the more that Ju Wenjun can kiss goodbye to those winning chances. And Alice is going to drag this game for as long as possible. Okay, attack the bishop. Alice there did make some mistakes with a b5.
And now there's a pass pawn for Ju Wenjun. This is a huge chance for the Women's World Champion to get that first winning bullet, but she missed her moment. She missed her moment to promote the pawn.
She missed it, and now Alice is the one who's keeping a close watch on that pawn. Bishop takes a7, it is a must. And now, yes, the h7 pawn falls, but it does mean that Alice is able to drag the game for even longer, and the king slides up. But it doesn't really matter, Anna, because it's all about how long it takes Ju Wenjun to win this game.
And that is crucial. As you said, the overall match time, it's only 8 minutes and 20 seconds left in the match in total. So even though the endgame is winning for Ju Wenjun, it's still going to take a lot of precious seconds to convert it. Alice will fight until the very end, because every single move takes time off of the overall match clock. And she's leading by 5 points. Ju Wenjun will have to win 5 games within 8 minutes to tie the score. It's gonna start becoming a mission impossible, especially since this game is still on.
Yeah, this game is still on, and Alice still fighting hard. Okay, this is definitely the clincher as the pawn goes to h7. And now you can slide the king to g8. But notice how Alice is not resigning. She's not going to be resigning. Maybe she's going to even force Ju and Jun to burn some seconds mating with king and rook. Why not? As it becomes clearer and clearer that it's going to be very, very difficult, almost impossible for Ju Wenjun to fight that gap.
7 minutes and 14 seconds left in the match overall, and Alice is still playing on because she should burn more time off of that overall match clock. And now the king is on the back rank, it should be checkmate in a few moves. So we are here to see also the technique. Ju Wenjun has been showing how to checkmate as quickly as possible with the rook. She gets that win, narrows the gap, but it's still 4 points. Ju Wenjun still needs to win 4 games within 6 minutes and 45 seconds. That's all the time we have left from the bullet and from the overall match.
Yes, and look at the strategy that Alice employs. Is like, no, nothing open. Everything is closed. There's got a lot of tension on the board. All the pieces remaining. And there's now we see a knight trade and c4. Maybe we're going to be seeing c5, but no, c takes d5, also good enough. She just wants to simplify the game in order to drag out every single game for as long as possible and get ever closer to match victory. Knight to b3, excellent move, targeting the pawn on a5, threatening knight to c5, and now white is the one who is spoilt for choice. And look at Ju Wenjun's face. She knows that this match is perhaps beyond saving.
She knows it, and she's shaking her head. The position is collapsing. Now the knight sacrifice, revealing the discovered attack through the c file. She goes bishop a4 to then take the knight, but the position is still very dominant for white. e4 or queen c5, chasing the knight away. And Alice just keeps going with the pawns, not caring that her rook is hanging. She's counterattacking the black queen.
Counter that queen has to move away, and yes, it centralizes itself, and the rook just has to drop back. And Ju Wenjun just taking care of all of her pawns, but Alice does have a fantastic center. She can start driving that queen back with f4. She can maximize her queen, come up to c5, start attacking a5, and Ju Wenjun very much on the back foot. The knight on b6 is not a happy customer, doesn't have a good home.
It does not have a good home, unfortunately, for Ju Wenjun. That knight would be a lot happier on an outpost like on the c3 square or in the center, but there's no hope of maneuvering the knight there, and there's a queen trade offered by Alice, trades now between the pawns as well, and what remains are these weak pawns for black that if you trade the rooks and then capture on b4, it is a very pleasant advantage with the bishop fighting against the black knight.
Yeah, and there's no way that black can make use of the fact that the bishop is on f1. Ju Wenjun does try with rook to e1, threatening the pawn on e4, but calmly defended by Alice. And now threat of knight to e3, but there's a pin in town, and how is black gonna extract themselves from that one? Don't know. It's gonna take a miracle.
Gonna take a miracle, and the c7 pawn falls, and once that pawn is off of the board, the d-pass pawn is incredibly strong. Alice is waiting, capturing that pawn and just maintaining the pin and waiting for the best moment to take the black pawn and create her pass pawn. It might have been better to capture it sooner. Now the black king is really active and it's a bit scary, but with the checks you are preventing any kind of attack. And the rook is guarding the f1 bishop, so Alice is just simply pushing her pawns.
Yes, and look at those pawns go. One of them is about to queen, and wow, fantastic control there from Alice as she extends her lead. Alice going for the ultra-solid Caro-Kann advance there from Ju Wenjun, and we're seeing c5 being tried out. Just over 3 minutes remaining in the match clock, and Alice, she's going for targeting the pawn on e5, just establishing that great center, and nothing has worked out here for Ju Wenjun. It just feels like Alice is the one who has the better flow.
She has definitely had the better flow in terms of the preparation as well. It looks like Alice's openings have been working out better, and her confidence and playing fast and playing well even under severe pressure on the board or on the clock. She really has kept her cool in the toughest moments as well in the games and managed to turn positions around that we would think Ju Wenjun will be winning easily because she has a decisive advantage. But those were some of the games that escaped from the women's world champion, and Alice just fighting through every single game with either color. She's going for it. And as she has a 5-point lead with 2 minutes left from the match. Now, it's no longer the question who will qualify to the semifinals, but what will be the final score, because that matters for the prizes as well and who takes home how much.
Yeah, that is definitely going to have an impact. But Alice is definitely going to be finishing today with a big smile on her face because she is virtually through to the semi-finals. With just 1 minute and 40 seconds remaining of the match, it is more or less over for Ju Wenjun. And Alice, she's going to be there in the semifinals in sensational form. The rook starts mobilizing. Rook takes d3, being threatened. Rook to b7. I would say white is definitely the one with a small edge here. But, okay, Alice is definitely within fighting distance here.
Fighting distance for sure with the active king and the d pass pawn. She's now pushing her h pawn. Ju Wenjun creating a pass pawn on the queen side. But then the d pawn will also be marching, and this rook is keeping an eye on the a pawn.
Yeah. And look at the d pawn go as Alice then just steps up with the king. And sure, Ju Wenjun is a pawn to the good, but the compensation is very much there. Some checks being played. 40 seconds remaining of the match. This could be the last game that we see in this quarterfinal. And king goes back. Will we see a repetition? More checks? No, the rook comes to a6.
Ju Wenjun is playing on, but maybe this will not prove her in any good way, that now this pawn is so close to promotion, and the rook could give a check or take on g2.
And 6 seconds, Anna. 4, 3, 2, 1. This is the final game. And for Alice, it doesn't mean anything because she is the one that qualifies to the semi-finals. Rook h2. She has a fantastic rook, a fantastic king. She just has to keep a watch on the g-pawn. And for Ju Wenjun, it's just going to be checks to the king. But it has been the Alice show, right? From the first game in the 5+1 to the bullet, Alice is the one that's been dominating.
She has dominated every single segment of the match. We thought she would be the favorite in bullet, but she has proved to be the favorite in every single segment of the blitz, of the bullet, and she is our winner in the quarterfinals, knocks out the defending champion Ju Wenjun. 16-year-old Alice Lee is through to the semifinals with a dominant performance against the women's world champion. Wow.
Yeah, and it wasn't even close, Anna, because as we can see here, every single portion, it was Alice who was just crushing it. She went on a tear right from the start, winning 3 games on the trot. Okay, there was a small blip, but then she recovered to dominate the 3+1 and 3-1 in the bullet. 3.5, 9.5. I mean, I would not have thought that the margin would be there would be such a big gap between the two.
I also would not have expected to be this much of a difference. I did think that Alice would win. This was one of my hot takes, and I was like, wow, I'm so brave. But in fact, she was just dominant today. Leads throughout the entire match, wins by 6 points, and is going to face Greek FIDE master Anastasia Avramidou in the semifinals, who also produced a huge upset earlier in the tournament by eliminating both Polina Shuvalova and Katerina Lano. Anastasia being the only FIDE master in the tournament, and she is a doctor by profession. She plays in her spare time, and even on the day when she beat Katerina Lano, she was coming home from work and then defeated one of the strongest female players in the world. It was like another really inspiring story. But now it's Alice Lee who is shining, 16-year-old, youngest participant in the field, and now she has eliminated the only player who has never lost in the Women's Speed Chess Championship, Wenjun.
She eliminated defending Women's Speed Chess champion Wenjun, and she absolutely killed it from start to finish. What a performance. We're going to go on a short break because when we return, we're going to have Alice Lee, and I can't wait to hear her thoughts. So stick with us.
I feel like she's looking. She flinched. Time for my revenge. Good luck, Dina.
Good luck, Andrea.
Thank you. I've been working on my theory for this, actually. Have you studied?
Not at all.
Typical. I saw you have a new best friend now, huh? I remember when I was your best friend.
Yeah, that was at the time when you still remembered my date of birth.
Did you remember mine?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure I did send you a happy birthday text.
Yeah, but what's the date?
It's in November, December. Okay. But I did send you a happy birthday text.
Of course.
Okay.
A day later.
Well, I was in Europe, so... Or no, actually, I was in...
Yeah, in Europe it would be a day, in Europe it would be a day earlier. How does it feel to finally find your love?
I knew that was coming. Feels great, thank you. Okay, I'm down a lot of time. I had some interesting... Okay, so I feel like your secret queen is not on this side. Because it's definitely not the H pawn. Maybe it's probably the G pawn. Everything is okay for now. Oh my gosh, I have 40 seconds. How does it feel to still be in love?
Amazing.
Is he still beating you at chess, or have you?
Yeah, that's why the love is so strong.
Nice.
How's your hearing?
It hasn't gotten any better. Are you stalling because you're about to checkmate me?
Yeah.
Are you serious? No. There's no mate with secret queen. Okay. No, you're just bluffing. Oh, there's no checkmate even if you had a queen on G8, B7. Okay. Okay, so your queen is right here. Nice. And I'm all defended.
I heard your sister finally found her love.
She did. I actually helped scout him for her.
Really?
Yep.
Are you like matchmaker?
I'm a matchmaker. That is, they call me modern day Cupid. That's why we're wearing red. Oh! You're gonna kingside. Oh, okay. All right, I need to get some speed. I have 16 seconds. Okay, what are you playing here? Should I sack my knight for your juicy queen? I don't need to sack, actually. Or maybe I should have sacked. Oh. It's okay. Yeah, simple tactic. Okay. Oh, man. I panicked under time pressure. Can we play one more?
Hi, I'm International Master Ivanka Hauske, and welcome to my first course for chessable, starting out the Caro-Kann. Light square strategy is what I like to call it. You put your pawns on light squares, you develop your pieces, and then when the time is right, you break out in the center. What I need you to do is get in the focus of quick development. Knight takes g7, check is possible, king moves to f8, attacking the knight, and now after knight to h5, what we want to be doing is first asking that question to the knight, because white can immediately go wrong with knight to e2. We simply go knight to b4, and this bishop and the knight have orchestrated a sneak attack against c2, and now black is totally winning. There are lifelines to help you remember the piece configurations, there are guidelines, there are cautionary tales, and of course there are my trademark phrases, all to help you get a good Caro-Kann. Welcome back, everyone, and we are here with our giant slayer, a woman of the hour, woman of the match, International Master Alice Lee. Congratulations, Alice. That was a dominant performance from start to finish. I mean, first up, how are you feeling? And then you've got to walk us through every single moment, because that was very spectacular.
Yeah, thank you. I did feel like this match was certainly like, it wasn't as like two-sided as like the match that I played against Kostenuik, where I was like down by a lot, and then eventually we went into tiebreaks. But this match, I think, honestly, like the first game, I felt like I was not really seeing like tactics. I blundered some queen b5, and I was very fortunate that I had some resource to not completely lose on the spot. But like after that, I felt that I just started playing like faster, and I mean, I got like the code shock of like the first game being like kind of almost on the brink of losing. But yeah, like after that, for the entire match, I was just trying to keep the lead up, and once it got to like 3 or 4, I felt pretty confident in my chances.
Congratulations from my side as well, Alice. It has been absolutely just impressive, your performance throughout, from that game one that you mentioned that you managed to survive, and then how dominantly you kept your lead. I wanted to ask you about your preparation for the Women's Speed Championship, and how did you approach today's match against Ju Wenjun in particular? You faced her in the quarterfinals 2 years ago, but this time it was a very different story.
I was not expecting too much from this match, because when I played Ju Wenjun like 2 years ago, I also kind of got like demolished. So also she's like an extremely good player, so I thought it's in like these 5+1, especially with the increment and like no dirty flagging, like it'd be very difficult. But I don't know, I felt like maybe her internet was like not very good this event, so I got lucky in that. But for my preparation, I guess like I didn't really do too much. I was at the US Junior tournament, which ended yesterday, and like I think throughout the like 9 days, I played a lot of blitz, which might have helped.
And well, Alice, you've had a very successful July month so far, and you mentioned that you were playing in the US Junior Open. I know that you did very well there. And Krishna asks a question which is quite relevant to this. It says, is online speed chess match easier to play mentally after coming from a classical tournament, or does it have no effect at all?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because honestly, like the classical tournament that I played in was like 10 days. It was I think also quite like a high pressure event. So I felt like this tournament was like more chill. But then also the prize fund that's given out for this event is extremely like nice. So I did feel like this was also serious, but I guess I don't know. I think I felt more chill about it, and because of that, maybe I was like more relaxed and I played better.
I wish we could all be more like you, Alice, that it's chill to play against the defending champion and the women's world champion. You just made it look so easy. And I think that's why a lot of the viewers are also wondering about your preparation and your mindset. Carrie Chess is asking if it helped you in any way, your experience playing online matches on Chess Kid. I'm not sure if you would call that as the main preparation. This is what Carrie would like to know about the Chess Kid matches and your experience in general playing online chess, I believe.
Yeah, I remember in the first match that I played that I really focused on was, I guess, maybe like 6 years ago. I played in this Chess Kid Speed Chess Championship against like Rao Chet, and it was like these matches are all like 15-game matches with similar format. And I also had some match against like Tani for another Chess Kid event. So I think definitely playing in those gave me like a lot of experience, but I'd say it's just like I also got a lot of experience from playing in this event like 2 years in a row, and also like playing online, just not in the tournament.
Yeah. And talking about playing online chess, we saw you warm up for both your match against Wenjun and Alexandra Kosenik with these bullet games. And I just wanted to ask, is this like a particular strategy heading into this match against a strong opponent? And kind of adapted a question from Wolfie Ragnarok there. And is this something, just to get the juices flowing? Is it like a kind of ritual that you do? Or
Yeah, I usually tend to like do something that I can test like my mouse speed. So I play with either online on Chess.com for bullet, or I do like some puzzle rush. But also for like this match, I also like woke up like 30 minutes before, so I don't think my brain was working too well. I just wanted to play some moves, and I think I did very badly in the bullet like before this match, but I think it hopefully helped me with like playing quicker.
It certainly seems like it did, and we didn't notice that your brain was still waking up. To us, it felt like you've been on fire from start to finish in this match, and now you're through to the semifinals. You'll be facing one of the other surprise qualifiers of the event, Greek FIDE master Anastasia Avramidou. I'm curious if you have been following the other matches, and what are your thoughts on your upcoming match in the semifinals against Anastasia?
Yeah, unfortunately I wasn't able to follow it because I think it intersected with my event, but I did look at like the scores, and I saw like who went through to the semifinals. So she defeated Katerina Lagno pretty convincingly, I think. So I think she's very good, and I'm not sure how I'll approach the match, but it will definitely be quite difficult.
Yeah. And are you looking forward to playing longer? Because there's a whole new time kind of limit on the semifinals. So 75 minutes, 50 minutes, and 25 minutes of bullet. It's a whole lot more chess.
Yeah, that's a lot of chess. I think definitely I'll have to like think about it because I've never been to the semifinals before. I think I always like won my first match and then lost the second. So the longer format I'm not super used to. But yeah, I'm excited to play more games. And I think in general that would also probably give a better sense of like more chances for comebacks in the match.
We're definitely looking forward to the longer time control now that we are moving on to the semifinals. And another upcoming event that the viewers are particularly excited about and are asking you about, Max is saying, are you excited for the Chess Olympiad this September?
Oh yeah, I'm very excited for the Chess Olympiad. I think my experience 2 years ago in Budapest was very good, and in general, I think it's one of the funnest events for me to play because I'm playing like on a team with, I guess, for the U.S. And well, I usually like play against a lot of the people, the top American women. I'm playing on a team with them, which is very nice now, and I think it's definitely like a fun change.
It is definitely a fun change. And just one final question. How will you be celebrating tonight?
I'm not sure. I'm still in St. Louis, actually, at the St. Louis Chess Club, and they were like very generous in giving me a room here so I could play. But I will be going to the closing ceremony, which is at like I think 5 p.m. today, and there's still like a lot of players that are hanging around. So I think I'll just try to enjoy the time that I'm still in St. Louis.
Well,
That sounds like
definitely.
a
I think
wonderful plan.
absolutely. Well, enjoy your day. Congratulations once again, Alice, on making it through to the semi-finals and knocking out the defending WSCC champion. We wish you the best of luck in your upcoming match. But there we have it, another quarterfinals in the books, and we have a completed bracket in the semi-finals as we see Alice Lee. Her next opponent will be Anastasia Avramidou. Anna, that was quite an exciting match. And what I gotta mention this, Anna, about this whole situation is that both of these players, Alice and Anastasia, they're underdogs. Both of them rocked up to their games, very casually. They played like bosses, and we are going to be seeing an epic semi-final. But we still have one quarterfinal left, and that is between Hoi Fan and Anna Muzichuk. Yes, as we do some nice camera work there to find out who is going to be facing off against Bibisara Salbaeva.
That's going to be a huge one. Our final quarterfinals coming up on Monday. We'll be here to cover the action where the number 1 rated female player, Hoi Fan, is back in action, and her opponent is none other than multiple times World Blitz and Rapid champion Anna Muzichuk. I think that match could go either way, and we all need to be here on Monday to witness it, because that's going to be an absolutely brutal clash of 2 of the strongest female players.
Absolutely. It's going to be fireworks and all of the positive adjectives. I completely agree. Will we be seeing more upsets on Monday? Well, that is a big question. But for now, well, congratulations to Alice Lee for a sensational performance, defeating reigning 2-time WSCC champion Ju Wenjun. We'll be seeing more from her in the semi-finals. But in the meantime, big thank you, Anna, for all of your insights, all of your wisdom, and all of the entertainment, because I've loved every single moment, every single move. And also a big thank you to everyone at home for watching. We'll be back with a lot more of the action on Monday for our 4th and final quarterfinal. It's going to be epic, so you don't want to miss it. Until then, goodbye, and thank you for watching.